Okay, welcome to the call, everybody. This is Aaron Murakami with A&P Electronic Media at emediapress.com and the Energy, Science, and Technology Conference, which is at energyscienceconference.com. Today is June 27th, 2020 at noon Pacific time. And we have Eric Dollard live on the call. Coming up here on July 9th is going to be a 4-day conference in Hayden, Idaho, which is about an hour drive from the Spokane International Airport in Spokane, Washington. And we're going to have a 4-day event. This is going to be the 9th annual conference that I've organized. And Eric is going to be giving 2 presentations. The first presentation, I think, is going to be on the work of Oliver Heaviside, and it's essentially going to be a presentation by Eric, which is an extension or a sequel to Heaviside's work. And that one is probably going to be about 3 hours long. And then the next day is going to be a 4-hour presentation on Charles Fortescue, dealing with a lot of the versor algebra math that Eric has been developing and what we published and put on Amazon, and Versor Algebra Part 1 and 2. And before I, just so we remember, I just want to mention, Eric, when Scott Hensler went there and straightened out the computer, were you able to get logged on to Energetic Forum so you could see the photographs and everything?
I don't think so. Somehow that didn't quite get completed.
That didn't get completed. Okay. So, but it sounds like you've been in touch with Griffin, because he posted some more pictures on there, all these little telephone poles.
He called the other day.
Okay, so he's on a call too, so at some point we'll open up so you can kind of share the latest updates that he posted in the forum and your take on it and that kind of thing. Is there anything specific that you want to cover, kind of go over? This is exactly 4 weeks since the last call.
Yeah, it's, well, busy on the presentation and wrapping it up. That's about the best I can say right now. Otherwise, my mind is kind of blank on anything else other than the carnival.
Right. Yeah, so this is going to be... So I'm in the process of helping to put together Eric's 2 presentations that I just mentioned, and I do want to bring up Eric's website is ericpdollard.com, and EPD Laboratories Inc. is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, so all donations are tax deductible. This helps to pay the bills, keep the building running, and support Eric's work there. With the donations, it's kind of at a, the organization is kind of at an idle. So Eric is mostly focusing on writing and doing his presentations. But we do need donations to help pay the bills, pay insurance and utility bills and that kind of stuff. And if you go to ericpdollard.com, in the right column, you can scroll down and you can see some donate information, and there's also a donate link. And if you're able to donate either by PayPal, or there's an address in Spokane, Washington where you can send checks or money orders to, then I just forward those back to the bank down there in Nevada. Any donations are greatly appreciated, and every bit helps. And also, recently I made an announcement that if you want to write Eric directly, rather than sending emails or anything else or through Facebook or whatever, the best way is to write him a personal letter. For a long time, he's been using a general delivery address in Lone Pine, California. It's getting too difficult to get over there with all the political nonsense and these protests and whatever you want to call them. And so we have posted a new address in Nevada, which is on Eric's website. I think it's on the Contact Us page. I updated it there. And if you go into the right column near the donate information, there's an address in Nevada where you can write Eric letters directly. And, as long as they're not too far out and crazy or whatever, he'll always pretty much write you back. And so that's definitely the best way to get a hold of Eric. And if you want to meet him in person, we do have a handful of seats available at EnergyScienceConference.com. You can go there and register and purchase a ticket. Anything else you want to mention, Eric, about what you're currently working on or the music stuff? Or
yeah, I guess I should kind of give a little synopsis of what's going to happen with the presentations. So
okay.
There's two very important papers, or in Heaviside's case, a series of papers that was ultimately banned and censored. That was called Electromagnetic Induction and Its Propagation. And Heaviside went off into a lot of tangents on that and didn't really stick to the main theme. I'm sticking to the main theme and bringing it up to the point at which he was finally forced to stop publishing. And it involves the Maxwell's equation concept and transmission and all the things that Heaviside's name's attached to. Now, usually when I do these things, it's kind of basically just like a couple of seconds spent on each slide. It's mostly just for the image value and not the details. But in this case, there's not very many slides at all in comparison, and I'm going to very methodically go through each slide as time allows to make sure that there's a thorough understanding of what actually all the symbols mean and how they interact. And then at the end, there will be a piece of music that Handel wrote with regard to power, and that's basically what the presentation is about, is electric power. And it's remarkable that this particular piece of music, called The Power of Music, the words actually describe the process going on in the Heaviside equation. It's kind of uncanny how something several hundred years ago turns out to be a complete analog of what the mathematics is about. The Fortescue one is the same thing. The Fortescue paper on his symmetrical coordinate systems will be basically simplified and modified to a point where it'll pick up places where he left off, mostly with the help of Wagner and Evans' book, which kind of took the Fortescue from a completely incomprehensible mathematical quagmire into something that was workable, and then I worked that further, which is written in the two Versor algebra books. So basically, this presentation is going to be Versor algebra number 3, or part 3. Again, it will get very detailed into how to actually use the Fortescue method. There'll be numerous examples of various line and load conditions and all the vectors that will employ what I've come to refer to as the Dollard method of analysis. It's something that got me in trouble in the Navy, in Navy electronics school, because I was coming up with the answers too quickly, and they were always right, and I was accused of cheating. So at any rate, we will carry that cheating further and bypass all the useless mathematics and get right down to doing it all geometrically. And that will also end with a piece of music, which is a piece of polyphase music written by Bach. It's 4 phases, and the phases will be identified and portrayed, and then again the piece of music itself will be played. And so all the mathematics and electrical and all that basically most people will not really fully get when you listen to the piece of music. Then your subconscious will put all the pieces together, assuming that you can get away from your silly phone or your device long enough to pay attention to anything that's going on around you. In fact, actually, I was going to try to jam everybody's silly phones out, but that wasn't really feasible. But I will request everybody that cannot get away from their social media to leave the audience before the music is played, because I don't want their mental waves distracting the voodoo of this piece of music. And let me tell you, this piece of music has got some powerful voodoo, very powerful voodoo. and that's what we need in this day and age, considering what our Bolinas terminology has denoted as the Kami Corona Carnival. So I will end at that point with this. So you can carry on, Aaron.
Okay. Okay, so if you have any questions, well, actually, since Griffin's on here, let's open it up so you and Griffin can kind of explain a little bit about what's posted in Energetic Forum. So there's two forums. There's EnergyScienceForum.com, and then there's EnergeticForum.com. EnergeticForum.com is where we have Eric's official forum. There's quite a few topics in there. There's a main forum, and recently there was a new thread started for Griffin Brock, who's been working on with Eric on a project. And do you know the full name of the thread offhand, Griffin?
It's a physical model representation of electrical distribution.
Yeah. And you want to kind of give a little synopsis of what the point to that thread is and what the a little overview of the project?
Mm-hmm. So the whole idea of it was to construct not a scaled model of a distribution system, but to showcase a certain length of system and to demonstrate the various transformer connections and how they play a role in harmonic development. These include delta, y, 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 delta, delta, those types of transformer connections with linear and nonlinear loads. And to see how this actually plays a role in today's system of how most connections are made in y, and the true disadvantages of it. Now, this was actually for a separate project of mine. It was a science contest, and it was finished in time, but the main purpose of it was to see the disadvantages of a Y-Y connected transformer.
Okay. It sounds like your connection is a little bit choppy.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully everybody got that. So you've been communicating with Eric on the latest, because this was I don't know, maybe a month ago when you did maybe the first couple posts, 1 or 2 months ago, and then right now I saw these extra little telephone poles and stuff. You said you had.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, oh, go ahead. No, well, before the call, you were mentioning there's some anomalous things that were happening, and I don't know if you had a chance to talk to Eric about those, but is that thread? Hold on a second. Is that thread in the Eric Dullard forum, or is that just like a renewable energy one, or?
Oh no, it's in the Eric Dullard official forum.
Okay, so yeah, if anybody wants to see this, you can go to energeticforum.com, and then in the left column, you'll see a list of the different forums, and you'll see an Eric Dullard one, and inside there is the one that Griffin is talking about. You do have to be logged in to see the pictures or download attachments. It is free to join, and if you join energeticforum.com, immediately email help@emediapress.com with your username and whatever email you use to register, and we'll get your registration approved right away. That way you can go in there, you can contribute to the conversations, ask questions, or look at and download the attachments. So go ahead, Griffin, if you want to talk about these anomalies or whatever you're finding with your experiments.
Oh, well, with this, it's the sine waves, the total oscillograms. I've posted the oscillograms on the website, on the forum. But when the transformer, the generating end, is connected in a delta to Y fashion and the neutral is grounded to a pipe, I have a pipe representing the Earth, and it's a 10-foot pipe, so it extends across the whole table. And the total sine wave distortion of the generator without any loading, it's not perfect. It's not a clean sine wave, so it's a tad distorted. But nevertheless, on the receiving substation where it's down, that is figured by delta, and the neutral on the Y floats, so they're not physically connected. And then when it's loaded with an incandescent bulb, it's a hobby bulb from a train shop, doesn't draw a whole lot of power. Sine wave gets dampened a bit, its amplitude, that is, And then when it's connected with a nonlinear load, in this case 2 LEDs, the wave becomes distorted, the bottom half of it. But it's not too terrible when it's connected as compared to when it's connected in a YY manner, where the whole sine wave without any loading, it's completely disfigured. And then with a nonlinear loading, it's completely unrecognizable from a sine wave. It's almost a square wave. And the top becomes flattened. Delta-delta configuration, there are no harmonics that are... So it's a completely clean system since it's an isolated system. And then, nevertheless, I presented these findings to the scientific contest judging panel, and I await to see what results. And then going back to, I haven't updated the seismic, electrodynamic seismic forecasting page, but not too long ago there was a 7.4 in Mexico. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't receive any electrical signals, and I've determined that on certain parts of the globe I cannot receive the signals. But nevertheless, the night before, it was a coincidence that I happened to be listening to the ionosphere with my frequency selective voltmeter that I recently repaired. And I heard some of the strangest sounds. I heard what sounded like old-fashioned choo-choo trains, motors starting up, firecrackers going off, and this is really all occurring around 15 kilocycles. Now, during the daytime, there's inverters and other interference that kind of block this off, but at night time, it's just the roar of activity, especially the night before that quake.
Did you get that, Eric?
Yeah. Yeah, it's usually, the night before is usually when everything goes wild.
Mm-hmm.
So your graphs were presented to the group at the NASA Ames facility there in the occupied territories, and they were quite startled that that they haven't been able to really do much of anything yet. A high school kid comes up with something that works. But my friend Ernst, he likes to pull those kind of stunts. Their question was how many times a day do you sample your measurements for drawing the graphs?
I usually sample it about 5 times a day since I'm out of school as of now with this whole corona thing.
Right.
I usually pick the highest point, the highest measurement, but since there's other loads that, especially the washing machine and microwave and things like that, those are appliances, they kind of tamper with the reading, so I have to make sure I'm not picking up any local interference, and then I compare that with other readings during the day, and then I come up with the final reading.
Okay, so you're basically boiling it down to one number a day?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been wanting to extend it even further, but since I'm not always home, I don't want to keep the graph blank, and I don't want to make up any numbers. So
yeah.
I've been trying to create a chart recorder, but I haven't had any success with that, so I'm still attempting to create one.
Yeah, a strip chart recorder would be helpful. So I guess I think you've already talked to Ernst once. He's building a Marconi flat top to do this ionospheric measurement. So hopefully he has lots of distractions in his life, so it's kind of hard for him to get anything done right away. But I'm hoping in the near future he will have that done, and then we'll have a couple systems on the air.
Does he reside in what transformer connection does he live close?
It's all delta primary there, so the interference shouldn't be too bad. But there'll be plenty of it, but it shouldn't be any worse than where you're at. In fact, it's probably less because he's kind of in the edge of a suburban area where there's a lot of horse ranches and open land type situations there. So I think he's got about a 5-acre piece of land that's all fenced off. So that's pretty good. It looks like Camp Gregorio is going under because the crime situation has just gone over the edge in the occupied territories. So we have we've discontinued any operations at Camp Gregorio, and so the caloric system that was going to go in there will not be installed, which is unfortunate because that's one of the most electrically quiet areas in the neighborhood. But at any rate, the carnival is starting to make everything very, very difficult.
It's all going downhill. But I'm also taking measurements with the selective voltmeter. I'm taking decibel measurements. And
yeah, and listening. It's important not just to look at a meter pointer, but from what you're hearing, you're starting to learn a lot right there.
Oh yeah.
So
before there was a 6.0 in Lone Pine, and a 6.0 in Japan. I believe about 2 days ago, and I was measuring some pretty high measurements the day before, and I was very certain that there was going to be something nearby because decibels. The meter on the selective voltmeter was the highest I've ever seen. So I predicted.
Yeah, I was actually I was getting the brief interval in the morning when I was listening to the AM radio in the car. I was using the auxiliary Corolla, which is not calibrated, but there's a remarkable amount of noise on the AM radio band, which is kind of unusual for 8 or 9 in the morning. And then I forget the exact dates, but then someone told me the earthquake actually was not in Lone Pine. It was down by Olancha and kind of off to the east. Lone Pine's a locked fault. So if Lone Pine gets an earthquake, it'll be something really serious. But there's been earthquakes around it, and it seems like there's been about a magnitude 7 earthquake somewhere every 5 days. So it appears that the seismic activity and volcanic activity of the Earth is on a very significant rise, which is, as I've just recently learned, is characteristic of the solar transition we're going through now. And even though the solar flux is quite low, my morning measurement of the ionosphere indicates that the skip on 30 megacycles is significant. So the sun's putting out some kind of radiation that's charging up the ionosphere, which doesn't show up on the solar flux. Right now, there are no active regions on the sun to speak of, but it about 4 or 5 days ago, the whole sun kind of sparkled with little cathode spots, even though the solar flux was low and the sunspot number was 0. So it's kind of quieted down again, so it's all a new cycle, so we'll wait and see. I'm kind of satisfied with the phase reference that I established for these telephone calls for 28 days, that they would all end on Saturday, which is Saturn Day. It's the Saturn-Jupiter configuration that's causing all of this madness and perpetuating this carnival, which will probably last for about 18 months, and the planets will cross on November 4th, so I would advise everybody to be very deep in the ground around that time.
I always check this website every day, or sometimes twice a day. It's called Space Weather Live, and they posted an article on the day right before the 7.4 in Mexico and the continental 6.0s around the world, and it was the sun's output. Now it actually peaked and made this strange almost perfect sine wave anomaly. And had all these scientists flabbergasted of why, but then sure enough, the series of quakes followed.
Now, what happened on the sun? Because you're getting all cut up.
Okay. Well, there's the output of the sun. I'm just...
What on the sun? Can you get it better than me, Aaron?
Not really. It's kind of chopping off.
Okay. Well, the output of the sun, I'm just going based off of memory, that the output is usually staggered, but in this case it maxed out and almost created this perfect sine wave. As far as the article was saying, but it was a strange anomaly, according to the author and some other scientists.
So what was the sine wave consisting of? Solar flux, magnetism? What was the sine wave?
That's what I can't exactly remember right now, but I'm pretty sure it was magnetic, overall magnetic activity. But
oh, okay, yeah, because they have a graph, the interplanetary magnetic field, which reverses polarity quite regularly. I've been watching that one every day. So that must be the one they were talking about.
yeah, and the Lone Pine, I mean the one in California the other day, the 6.0, I was able to predict 20 hours before it occurred, and it was quite active. That's when I was able to hear some of the strange sounds.
Yeah, you were close enough. So it still hasn't been determined how close you have to get before you can receive this stuff out of the ground, but it seems fairly localized.
Oh, this was from the atmosphere. The ground, I wasn't able to pick up anything. I've noticed that with the ground method, the telluric method, maybe a radius of 80 miles is most.
Yeah, that's about what I'm figuring. 80 miles, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Because when the Ridgecrest one occurred, I was up in Oregon, and then the voice frequency receiver, the Steve McGreevy box, there wasn't anything out of the ordinary, but the AM radio in the car tuned down to the 500 kilocycle maritime band just went absolutely insane. I never heard such sounds come out of the radio before. It literally sounded like it was trying to tear itself out of the car.
Oh.
So it's basically it's a scientific fact now that every major earthquake in the 7.67 range produces an ionospheric noise storm.
Oh, definitely. And I've been reading articles. I'm always up to date on this stuff. And it's puzzling scientists. They're coming up with conclusions that it may be electrical, that it may be not. It's just puzzling them.
Well, they want to be puzzled. It's not really engineering level. It's not puzzling. There's all this stuff. Doesn't even really need to be science anymore. It's all engineerable now. They're just trying. That's the problem we have these guys at NASA. They just want to keep getting money to write more papers, and they won't even go out and put 2 ground rods in.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I just want to give a little bit of context on this earthquake business, which is that Eric has been doing different forms of, I guess you could say, electrodynamic seismic forecasting for many years. There's different approaches to it, antenna lines in the air, receivers in the ground and all kinds of stuff, looking at the sun and matching all these pieces of data up to be able to forecast when that earthquake is about to hit, like 6.0 or greater. You can search online for musical seismograph, and this is about a 4-something hour presentation that Eric gave several years back. I had to actually go down to Nevada to record this. He wasn't able to come up to the conference that year. And it's actually a compilation of probably about maybe 5 or so smaller presentations that, all kind of go together. Each one is kind of complete in its own, but it does help to have the full context to how they all fit together. And then last year, Eric did a presentation, gave 2 presentations. One was on the 20-to-1 scale model Colorado Springs, demonstration and a presentation. And the other one was electrodynamic seismic forecasting. If you go to emediapress.com, we're in the process of building a new catalog to make it easier to search for stuff. But you'll see a list of the 2019 and 2018 presentations, and you can see the electrodynamic seismic forecasting one by Eric. I don't know what these sounds are in the background. If you have background sounds there, Griffin, some kind of clicking or something. But recently, Griffin Brock has posted in Energetic Forum maybe about 2 months ago or so. Is that also in the Eric Dollard Forum, Griffin?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so in the Eric Dollard Forum, and what is the full title of the thread that you started with your experiments?
With the power line experiments? No,
the electrodynamic seismic stuff.
Oh, it's just under electrodynamic seismic forecasting. Yeah, I believe Eric, or you created that thread, and then I just began replying.
Okay. So, yeah, if anybody wants to see the experiments that Griffin was doing by picking up some of the, Earth signals or antennas, above ground signals, whatever, as they're talking about these ground rods. This is picking up signals out of the Earth, and as they start to kind of build up, you can kind of forecast when an earthquake's going to hit. And Griffin has posted a few, there's like diagrams, some schematics of what his basic setup is. It's really very, very simple using, wire and ground rods and a certain kind of voltmeter and stuff. And so he's posted that along with some charts of some of the voltages that his system is reading. And as him and Eric are talking, you can kind of hear that he is able to kind of, foresee that there's some earthquake events that are going to happen. And how old are you, Griffin? 18, or you just graduated high school?
16 years old.
Well, you don't want to know what I was doing when I was 16, but I certainly wasn't doing anything like this. But at 16 years old, and you're a senior in high school, or just graduated?
Oh no, I just finished 10th grade.
Oh, you just finished 10th grade. Okay, so you're still in high. Okay, so you're not even a junior yet until fall. And Griffin is making more progress on some of this stuff than many PhDs and professors and electrical engineers that I know around the world. And I have a pretty good-sized network with a lot of people in these academic areas and stuff. And not once, almost nobody is getting the kind of results that Griffin is getting as a 16-year-old high school student who's not even in the 11th grade yet. So what's wrong with everybody else? I mean, nobody really has any excuse, and the stuff that you're building is very simple that the average, I mean, wouldn't you say that the average tinkerer could follow your diagrams and build the exact same system?
Oh, sure. If I had the space, I would build a whole Alexanderson antenna, but I'm only limited to a small plot, so I have to go up in the mountains and build my set, and then also the telluric set. It's the second time it gets destroyed by the street sweeper, so I have to rebuild the set. But that's as far as what I have.
Yeah. Now, are you able to come to the conference if you had a guest pass, or transportation is difficult, or?
Transportation may be possible. I would have to work it out with my folks.
Okay. Well, if you can come up as Eric's guest, and maybe you can, if you have time to put together a little PowerPoint or something, maybe you can kind of present on some of your experiments, both on the electrodynamic stuff and the power system.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah. Keep me posted.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's see. It's about 12:35 or so. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and mute you out, Griffin. If you have anything else you want to cover, just hit 5-star, and I'll unmute you, and I'll see if anybody else has any questions here. If you have questions about anything for Eric relating to any of this or any of his presentations or electrical engineering in general, go ahead and hit 5-star. Let's see, we've got a question from David. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you here. And where are you from, David?
Yeah, hi, Aaron. I'm from Petoskey, Michigan. Okay.
So, yeah, go for it. Go ahead and ask Eric whatever you want. We discussed a little bit earlier.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, hi, Eric. I'm not an electrical engineer. I do IT, so a lot of what you guys do, I don't fully comprehend yet. I just have a list of questions here to try to help me get a basic conceptual framework of longitudinal electricity and the difference between what we would normally consider an electric circuit. My first question is, in general, would you consider longitudinal electricity the same thing as James Maxwell's dielectric displacement current?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the Zenneck-Sommerfeld surface wave, but would that be one manifestation of dielectric displacement current?
No, the Zenneck surface wave is actually, I learned from my Radiotron Designer's Handbook, was actually debunked.
Really?
It's still a Hertzian type of waveform, I've got Zanuck's book here. It's not very clear. I heard about it through my involvement with Ernst Gilliman and his work. He had mentioned the Sommerfeld surface wave, which then seemed to become the Zanuck wave, and then I guess there's some people running around getting all kinds of money they're going to transmit wireless power by Zanuck waves, and we always hear these things. They seem to get all the money, but there's not a dime for doing any of the seismic stuff or anything of significance. So
right, I saw that.
The surface wave actually goes back to Sommerfeld. There's a type of wave that is in the boundary between the so-called conductor and the so-called dielectric. I'm sure if you went and looked Sommerfeld's work up, it would just be, a sea of differential equations and a bunch of stuff to make it completely incomprehensible. So I was surprised to read in the Radiotron Designer's Handbook that the surface wave was basically debunked, even though, that kind of has a weird sound to it. So whatever's debunked or not debunked, I'm never completely certain about. But that is not a Tesla longitudinal wave.
Okay. So, but you would consider a telluric current as a Tesla longitudinal wave?
That's the way Tesla conceived it.
Okay. I was also wondering, could you describe the difference between what Tesla constructed, his coils, I think, were sometimes referred to as magnifying transmitters. Do you know what the difference would be physically between one of those and the common Tesla coils like I could buy offline nowadays?
Yeah, the common Tesla coils they're not really related to Tesla directly. They're so bastardized and carried off in the wrong direction that I wouldn't even call them Tesla coils. They're just spark generators. So basically, any coil is a Tesla coil if it's operating at its resonant frequency and there's a complete impedance discontinuity at both ends. One end being zero impedance, that's the current end, and the other end being zero admittance, which is the so-called voltage end, and then the energy gets trapped bouncing back and forth in the coil, and you kind of refract it in a little bit at a time through the current end, and it's kind of like sound in a cathedral because the energy really doesn't have anywhere to go. It just keeps building and building and building, and that causes a stronger and stronger current in the current end of the coil, and then that current refracts through the point of a very, very low impedance, and then a corresponding current appears on the other side, preferably in a structure at the same resonant frequency, and that structure being the Earth. Then if the resonant coil and the Earth are operating at the same frequency and the same mode in that frequency, and there's a point of refraction or point of zero power flow that the wave in the Earth bounces back and forth, and the wave in the coil bounces back and forth, but only a little tiny bit goes one way or another, then that classifies as a magnifying transmitter.
Okay, so would the concept be to initiate a current with an alternating current and then pulse energy through the alternating current at resonance with the planet generally?
Well, the alternating current has to be resonant to the planet's frequency.
Okay.
So it starts to get into a lot of indeterminacy as to what is pulse and what's sine wave, and Tesla fished around a lot in that. You can't really trust things Tesla says because he'll say something one era and then he'll completely contradict himself in another era, and I think he was basically kind of being a chump after Wardenclyffe. Not that I could say that I blame him. I have the same personality traits after what I went through in Landers. Makes me a very undesirable person to be around, and that's exactly the way I like it. So I'm sure that Tesla was the same way. He was just cranky and just basically screwing with people's heads. But
Yeah.
My work, for the most part, has been on the sine wave, even though I have done the pulse stuff. The pulse stuff is better for the vacuum tube work. For the ground transmission, the sine wave is better because all the energy is concentrated on the frequencies that you want, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. There are no absolutes in this, and there's not enough scientific determination to say one way or another, but I do know how to make it work, and I have made it work. Even long before I even knew about Tesla, I was already transmitting 20 or 30 miles through the Earth.
With sine wave type currents?
Yeah, what was my frequency? 3.72 megacycles with my RCA 3 kilowatt transmitting set. I had discovered the extra coil resonance on my own and was studying the things that completely baffled the RCA engineers and baffled my physics teacher, and nobody could explain what it was that I had created. And then I was fooling around keying it one day, and I got a call from my friend on the other side of Mount Burdell up in Petaluma, and he goes, you know, you're farting around on the air, you're going to get in trouble. And I don't have the antenna hooked up. And he goes, well, I don't know what you got hooked up, but you're coming in full strength here in Petaluma. You better watch out what kind of, farting around you're doing on the telegraph key, because you're loud and clear everywhere. And then the second time I did it in Bolinas was on what was our frequency? 7.037 megacycles. And I was able to communicate with somebody in Los Angeles using just an extra coil. And pretty sophisticated ground system driven basically right into the water table that the San Andreas Fault ran through. So Bolinas is a radio anomaly. It's kind of Indians called it the hole in the sky. I think that's a good name for it. It's not only a radio anomaly in that you can pick up signals to a level there that defies the imagination, and conversely, they can be heard everywhere. But the Earth there is nonlinear, and if you receive out of the ground, you'll get 2 AM radio stations on one frequency because they're all intermodulating with each other. So the Earth there is a semiconductor, which opens up a whole another avenue of telluric activity, and that's what the professor over there at NASA is working on, is mineral semiconductor properties, and what he's discovering is absolutely outstanding as to how actually the minerals, and the type of currents, and how the whole thing is regenerative, because the current leads to force. Magnetism, current, and force can't be separated from each other. So if you got magnetism, you got current, and then if you got current and magnetism, they fight each other with the force. So basically, the rocks become superconductors and plastic, and then that further creates a force field that aggravates the situation, and then the actual mechanical force of the magnetism and the current fighting each other is more than the geological force that would lead to the earthquake. So it kind of starts chasing its tail, and the whole thing goes into an exponential runaway, and it's kind of like a lightning discharge. It just it saturates on itself until eventually it blasts. So it's not just the strain in the rocks, and and then they crack and they move around. There is a whole dynamic of the plasticity of the rocks and superconductor effects, and magnetic forces and electromotive forces, and it's quite fantastic. And this guy, his name is Friedemann Freude. He's fairly well known. You can look up his work on the internet. And
do you know the spelling of that?
Friedemann, let's see, if it's E, then the I occurs before the E, and then Freude is like Sigmund Freud, except there's an E on the end.
Oh, okay.
So it's F-R-E-U. So in German, Oi is E-U, or 2 dots over an O. So he's German. Okay. He's about 90 years old now, but he's still got his little corner there at Ames and his crowd of people, and I know him through a computer mathematician that I've known for a long, long time there that is in audio and what have you, my friend Ernst. And so Ernst kind of hangs out with them, and I presented my material to Friedemann, and he was quite fascinated that, you know, he had laid a theoretical basis for electrodynamic seismic activities, and I basically proved every one of his theories at Landers.
Cool.
But he's an academic, you know, and all he wants to do is write papers, and we can't get him past that point. So it's kind of, it's always the same situation. So all this stuff, you know, is quite evidently works, and I've been given, you know, ample facilities to carry this forward, but no funding.
I have a few more questions. I'm not sure if we want to give someone else a chance, but I have a few more questions if you have the time.
Yeah, that's up to Aaron.
Let's see. We have. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I was wondering, I've heard that the Poulsen arc converter is what can be described as a negative resistance device. I was wondering if you could describe what negative resistance is in your own words.
Negative resistance is a situation where if you have an element that's a positive resistance, if the current through the resistance increases, the electromotive force developed by the resistance increases in direct proportion. In a negative resistance, if the current increases through the resistance, the electromotive forces goes down. So in a nonlinear resistance, the proportionality between the current and the electromotive force is no longer constant. So there could be a situation where if you double the current, you would get 4 times the EMF, and that means that the resistance would have doubled if you doubled the current. But in a nonlinear negative resistance, situation occurs where as the current goes up, the EMF goes down, and if it does that in a nonlinear exponential fashion, then it becomes a short circuit, and that will tend to want to extinguish the arc, and then it'll try to recover. So it's somewhat a bit like a relaxation oscillator. So it's not a very good sine wave, but if you build a really powerful resonant circuit and connect it to that, then that tends to even everything out harmonically. And to this day, the Poulsen arc is still one of the most powerful sources of radio frequency power. The Navy had them up to 2 megawatts long before Alexanderson.
Could they do AM radio as well, or only Morse code type transmission?
Well, it had promised AM radio because it was a continuous wave, but the problem is there's too much phase jitter, and it was noisy. But nevertheless, some of the first radio broadcasting by Lee DeForest and those guys would have used apparatus similar to that. It was called the Duddle device initially. The guy's name that discovered this was Duddle. He was an American electrical engineer, I believe, maybe British, but a lot of that is in the Jerry Vasilato's real compendium on the military VLF.
Yeah, I happened to see your name in his book that I read recently. That's where a couple of my questions are coming from.
I also put together a, well, it never really got published or transcribed, just like most of my stuff, but I wrote something about the Ballina station and the kind of history of radio at that time. It's called Wireless Giant of the Pacific, and I briefly cover all the different types of radio frequency power generation in that era, in the Marconi era. And I do believe I show pictures of the Duddle apparatus and the Poulsen apparatus, and probably some patent numbers in that. And the Jerry Vasilato's real compendium would have. I found that a very valuable source of information on this, and that led to my final quantification of my version of the Alexanderson antenna. I have to thank Jerry Vassilaus for stimulating my ideas on that by presenting so much material on that subject that that I was able to take bits and pieces and put something together that was totally unique. It's gone beyond Alexanderson, and that's what I developed at Landers.
Cool. Can we buy all your books off your website, I assume?
So the Wireless Giant of the Pacific is at wirelessgiantofthepacific.com.
Okay.
If you go to Eric's site, ericpdollard.com, there's a link in the main menu bar that says free videos. You can also watch those. I think there's one wireless RCA one or something in there. But,
yeah, that's when I was out in the antenna field.
Yeah, so that's a free video on the free videos page on ericpdollard.com. And you're asking about longitudinal waves earlier. There's also 2 videos on there specific to longitudinal waves.
Okay, cool.
There's about 5 or 6 videos on there.
Awesome. I'll definitely check those out. I just have a couple more questions regarding Thomas Townsend Brown. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work at all, or.
Yeah, I know about it, but there's nothing there that really interests me too much.
I understand. Do you have any commentary on? I have a couple of questions specifically about a couple of his patents.
That's outside of my area. That's all that gravity stuff, and I'm not really involved with any of that.
Yeah, actually, it's not. It's funny. People describe his work as anti-gravity, but I've actually read his patents. He actually seems pretty straightforward about it being just an electrohydrodynamic ionic current of the atmosphere around his. I just don't know where he got that rap of anti-gravity, but that's fine. We don't. That's no problem. Other than that, I was wondering if you could describe the purpose of Tesla's hairpin circuit.
That's basically just a tuned resonant line, quarter wave line. So it's another magnification process, and it kind of obliterates the whole DC concept, because here you got this thick piece of copper, but the light bulb won't light at one end, but it'll light at the other.
Okay.
So that's kind of, that's a good grammar school level science experiment. I kind of did that on my own. I discovered a lot of Tesla stuff on my own, and that one, I was quite fascinated by that phenomena when I discovered it in junior high school. That a thick piece of copper wire offers a nearly infinite impedance at a certain frequency.
Cool. Well, I probably have more questions later on down the line that I'll think of. So I'll just, if someone else wants to go though, I'll stay on the call.
Yeah, we got to kind of divide it up.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, just hit 5-star later if you got something else.
Cool.
Okay. All right, thanks, David. Let's see, if your area code is 859, I'm going to unmute you right now. Go ahead and say your name, where you're from, and go ahead and ask your question.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Eric Sparkman. I'm from Kentucky.
Yeah, hey, Eric.
Hey, I just had a question. I've heard you guys talk about Rife frequency generators before. Is there a Rife frequency generator for whatever this disease is?
Can't really comment on that, but I'll tell you that just about everything I've seen online as far as frequencies and anything specific like that is all completely fake.
Yeah.
And if you know what Rife and Philip Hoyland moved towards was a sweep mode that went through a whole bunch of audio frequencies over and over and over in sequence repeatedly, from low to high, mixing with the fundamental. It hits all the harmonics that it hits frequencies that are harmonics of all the Rife frequencies that Rife did know, and all the ones in between, before and after anyway, which kind of one of the goals was to kind of obsolete the need to know any particular frequency.
Okay.
But I'd say if you want to understand how they did calculate those frequencies, go to my website, vril.io, vril.io, mouse over the products link, and then there's an RPX product there, which is a sideband generator that generates those frequencies how Rife did. But I would warn against finding, the stuff online where all these people are claiming different frequencies for different stuff, because there's no way they can know that unless they have a Rife microscope, and they don't.
Right.
So it's all fake.
Okay.
So and we make no claims other than it's producing those sidebands how Rife claimed he was, and that's about it.
Oh, all right. I had a question for Eric. Is there a concept of like an infinitesimal amount of ether?
You mean a unit quantity of ether?
Yeah. Like a lowest resolution to what you used to do engineering?
That really has never been developed. It's possible, but there's nothing concrete on that.
Oh, all right. I just wanted to say I'm a big fan of you guys' work. It's very interesting, and I just wanted to say I'm really impressed by Griffin's work, and that's basically all I had.
Okay, appreciate that. No, I recognize your name. I don't know if in the newsletters or we messaged a few times in Facebook, right?
Yeah.
So, cool. Well, thanks for being on the call. Do you have any other questions for Eric, or?
No, I need to read more of his papers, honestly. I did have one. Does he have a theory that correlates to the coupling, the electron coupling in copper, like ceramic superconductors? Is there like a more reasonable theory to explain superconductivity than like the quantum one?
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks, Eric.
All right, Liz.
Okay, let's see if your area code is 985. I'm going to unmute you right now. Go ahead and say your name, where you're from, and go and ask your questions.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. It's regarding Mr. Dollar and Griffin's caloric earthquake.
Okay, and what is your name?
Ryan Silcox from Mandible, Louisiana.
From Louisiana. Okay, go for it.
Okay, I have a question. Basically, the moon has been, if you look at every night, the moon, the crater positions have been rotating completely around, and it's never done that before, and it was noticed about 10 years ago. And the magnetosphere now has closed field lines around the Earth, and we never used to have that. And it looks as though the magnetosphere is contracting, and we're getting inductive heating and discharge from this from the closed field lines. And I was just wondering if Mr. Dollar has he noticed any of this, or does he have any opinion about it?
No, I've never heard of it. Sounds interesting, but it's not something that's presented itself in anywhere that I've seen it.
Well, NASA and like the NOAA they've been deleting all this data, and it was noticed about 10 years ago that it's not my work. It's a man by the name of Briggs, and what he noticed was that the craters of the moon were shifting positions all night long, and he was able to obtain data that showed that we never used to have closed field lines in the magnetosphere, but we have closed field lines now. And so what it's indicating is there's another man by the name on YouTube. He goes by Scientific Lee, and he uses ferrocell and ferrofluid to show the magnetic lines of force. And if you look at the magnetosphere, there's something else out there besides our sun that we're in contact with now. The opinion is that there's another sun that is now within our solar system, and that is why we have closed field lines. And the magnetosphere has contracted to where our satellites are or were, and we're getting a lot of inductive heating, and so we're seeing forest fires, increased earthquakes. The cell phone coverage is being affected. Just last year, I believe it was in the Arctic, they had a massive explosion in the ground in the Arctic. Just a few days ago, I believe, it's not Siberia, but Russia indicated that one of their cities that usually gets around negative 98 degrees is now positive 100 degrees. And I saw this morning where Florida said that they have tied the record high as far as temperature, and so it looks like something big is coming, because we're starting to see a lot of discharge in the atmosphere. And I know some people in the military that are overseas, and they've been having a lot of problems with their electrical equipment. They haven't been able to figure it out. They've called their manufacturers of this equipment, and they can't figure it out. And that's really all I have.
Okay, well, there's a lot of different reasons for that stuff, so it's kind of hard to pin one thing on another. I know the reason why they're having trouble with their equipment is because they're wiring it up all wrong. That's universal now. The entire maritime situation is everything is done wrong, and it's just wreaking havoc with everything. But it's been made into religion, and there's nothing you can do about it. I wrote a paper on it called The Electrical Utility of the Digital Age, and actually gave a whole presentation that demonstrated some of the actual problems. That was the, what was that called? The History theory and practice of the electrical utility system. It's Babylon. It's out of control. Everything is flying apart because the people that are now making themselves evident have so mucked everything up that it's literally an inside-out world.
Yeah, like the NASA.
I can't even use my CB or my AM radio, or in some places now these LEDs have built-in Trojan horses for jamming out radio. China, probably if we get into a hot war with China, which we should, so we can finally just disengage and stop buying their crap. I think that they have so flooded this country with Trojan horses that all they have to do is push a button, and everything will come to a standstill. So maybe we'll get to see that here in the near future. It'd be good. We really need to get rid of digital. It's got to go, or we're going to go.
Well,
right now, the only way the human race is going to survive if everybody promptly destroys their device, and they're not going to do it. So,
well, I don't want to get off on like a conspiracy theory, but there's.
It's not a matter of conspiracy theory because I pick it up on my radio.
No, what I was going to talk about is there's a military contractor. They're a private company called Deagle, D-A-G-L-E, and what they do is they look at population and they determine what type of the amount of military funding based off of the population. In 2015 or 2016, the U.S. population was 325 million. The next calculation they have is for the year 2025, and it's for 54 million people. So the question is, where did 270 million Americans go?
Yeah, well, I can't, that's kind of getting way off the subject.
Yeah. But,
so I have a question for you. Let's see. Ryan.
Yes.
Is that Jennifer Briggs who you're talking about?
No, he goes by the name, I believe his first name is Eric. He goes by Angry Catfish Briggs, and he was actually, I believe he was in the Navy, and I think he was a boat, like a boat navigator, and he was the one that noticed that the moon was kind of doing cartwheels every night, and he was trying to figure out what was going on because it never did that. And there's another individual on YouTube. His name is Scientific Lee, and I've been in contact with him now. A lot of his stuff, you know, he's very religious, so a lot of his stuff is in religious terms. But he actually he uses ferrocells and ferrofluid, which is like nano iron particles, and you can actually see the lines of force. And what he does is he'll stack different magnets together, and he uses, I believe it's like an LED lighting system, and he'll rotate them. And you get to see how these lines converge or diverge from each other. And you know,
I have one 2 feet from me.
Yeah, so using that, if you can get any data on the magnetosphere, there's closed field lines around the Earth, and that never happened. And if you look at the flow of the magnetosphere, there's something else off in the distance that we've locked into. And so his position is that we've actually another sun, and so
you covered that. I get it.
Yeah. Okay.
So the last name is Briggs, Briggs.
Yes.
Because I found an article on MSN, a mysterious crunch in Earth's magnetic field created a new type of aurora borealis. A NASA intern discovered it. And it was discovered by somebody named Briggs, but it's a woman named Jennifer Briggs.
It may be a relative of his, but the magnetosphere has contracted to where our satellites are, and on the back end of the Earth, we're getting a massive buildup of electromagnetism, and what it's doing is it's inductively heating us, and so like all this global warming conspiracy that it's man-made, load of crap. But we are getting heated up, but it's because we're in a closed field line system now. So we're seeing a lot of forest fires. We're seeing electrical.
No, I get it. You went over that. I get it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I had the name. Okay. Any other questions or? Is that? Okay. Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's see if your area code is 717. I'm going to unmute you right now. Go ahead and say your name, where you're from, and go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, I'm John Wise. You probably already know who I am. I'm from York Haven, Pennsylvania. I have a question for Eric on the Alexanderson radio system. They're going to be transmitting this far up here like another week, and I was trying to experiment to see if I could receive these very low frequencies, and I found out I can. I was surprised how simple I could receive them with just simply a crystal set type setup and a Hewlett-Packard signal generator to beat frequency like a direct conversion receiver, and I was surprised I was getting the submarine station out of Cutler, Maine, and I also picked up the one out there by Jim Creek, Washington, already. And I also was able to get the WWVD signal of 60 kilohertz, too. I was really surprised. Quite an interesting thing.
Yeah, the Navy ones aren't hard to pick up because they're megawatt facilities, but the Alexanderson station in Sweden does not have a very good signal. And they picked the worst time of year to do this because that's when most of the atmospherics are at their worst. So I think actually their antenna system's probably out of tune, probably needs to be realigned. I talked to the director of it. He told me the United Nations has taken control of the facility and they're really not allowed to do much of anything with it at all.
Oh, that's sad.
A lot of stuff's getting worn out. the bearing complications and gears and what have you. So I discussed what the proper thing to do would be with the guy, who was quite receptive, and it was encouraging that I could sense he had that coyote spirit, and he's willing to pull whatever shenanigans necessary behind the United Nations to do what might be good, but this would be too big of a deal. And the thing is what's important there is not the alternators. The alternators are obsolete. What's important there is the antenna. And if they generate their frequency with a set of water-cooled triodes, like some 891s or something where they could get up to about 100 kilowatt level, put that into the antenna, then the thing could be on the air all the time, which it needs to be, like a radio beacon. But the United Nations will not let them do anything there at all other than hit the start button for a couple hours every year. And these hysterical societies are, I've been through way too much of this stuff in the occupied territories, is you get these old fuddy-duddies and they can give a damn. They just want to get together and tell each other how good their farts smell, and then, they'd eat 10 pounds of carrion afterwards and waller off, and everything falls apart. It's really criminal, that this antenna exists and the facility exists, but such is the nature of the human species that, that this priceless treasure
Don't tell me anything new, Eric. I'm with you on all that crap that's going on out there. I don't want to get into that subject too much.
Yeah.
But I'm with you on all that. But the nice thing that would kind of interest me is to be able to at least maybe pick up the signal, because it's a historical thing that they're trying to run. The old-fashioned alternator. I seen the video that they had on their website, and they had an operation like last December. And everybody was dressed up in their Christmas garb and all that business. But I'm going to try to experiment with some kind of a circuit to boost the RF signal up and then run it through a product detector, and hopefully I'll get better results. And
where are you located at?
Well, I'm located right here in south central Pennsylvania. Not too far from Harrisburg.
You're closer to the station. It probably was originally made directional to Rocky Point, Riverhead RCA facilities. That's probably the last of the Radio Central RCA system that Alexanderson put together about 1921.
So you're kind of saying
what I would recommend, how much length of wire can you get? How much length of wire can you stretch out?
Well, if I had the money to do so, I could probably stretch out a wire across about 10 acres of ground in one direction, quite a few hundred feet. But right now, I have about a 90-foot long wire antenna, and it seems to pick up the Navy stations quite well. With just
you can pick up the Navy signals on the fillings in your teeth. But the Alexanderson,
I know. So
if you can get a wire the full length of your property, even just like Army field telephone wire, something cheap, and I don't know, you probably wouldn't be able to do the calculations, but if you can build your own Alexanderson antenna with, a certain amount of shunt inductance every so many feet and load the thing, and as a loaded network, like in my presentations and videos on the longitudinal analog networks, I think their frequency is 17.2 kilocycles, if I remember right. If you can build,
yes, it is.
If you can build a longitudinal transmission structure of shunt inductance and series capacitance, and tune it so that it resonates to that frequency, the full length of your property with, let's say, maybe 10 loading sections or what have you, if somehow you can technically achieve that, you'll probably pick it up, particularly if you have like a really good ground system at the receiving end. It's like a
I do have a decent grounding system here.
Okay, yeah, that might be, because very few people really seem to pick it up very well. I tried in Landers, and I had an Alexanderson antenna in Landers, and I spent days on getting everything all, optimized towards that frequency, and then the night that they set the thing into operation, the atmospherics, because of the tropical lightning, were so bad, I couldn't even pick up the signals that I use as test signals. There's 3 signals that come out of Russia. They still use the Omega navigation system. They're like between 10 and 12. If you can get those, you should be able to get the
I've got the resources to find that stuff out online, so I'm aware of that there's a lot of very low frequency signals out there around the world.
Yeah, so basically, if you can get the Russian signals and you can't get the Alexanderson signals, there's something wrong with the Alexanderson system. Now, in my case, I wasn't getting anything because it was all, blasted out by the tropical electrostatic activity. But nevertheless, the Navy signals, like the one in Jim Creek, still came in loud and clear because they damn near burn out my receiving equipment. Those signals are pretty powerful, so there's no problem picking them up.
I have a friend that lives about 3.5 miles from me, and he's told me he's tried 2 times to get the Alexanderson signal and failed both times, but I don't know what kind of an antenna system he was trying, but he had one of those, he built an up converter circuit so he could tune it in on a higher frequency on a communication receiver, and so he's kind of interested. I have another friend that lives, he lives about a mile from a powerful local AM station up in Harrisburg, and he has one of those Radio Shack receivers that goes down to 10 kilocycles. He's going to try for it, but I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, it's unless you build a complementary Alexanderson antenna, I don't think you're going to get it.
Yeah, well, the strange thing I see, Alex, I can't remember. Anyhow, I have seen that people online have computer software, and all they're saying, they hook up an antenna to the mic input on their sound card, and they've got a very low frequency receiver. But I kind of don't understand, are they using that to get the Alexanderson signal? I'm not sure, but they can pick up all the other stations.
Yeah, I mean, the receiver is one thing and the antenna is another thing. You could have the best receiver in the world, and if the antenna ain't worth a damn, then, you're not going to get anything.
You got to have an antenna.
The problem is you're going to get so much sensitivity on the receiver, and then if you go beyond a certain level of sensitivity, then you're just going to be overwhelmed by, all the atmospherics and what have you.
All the noise. Yes, I understand.
So there's.
Well, I'm going to take a stab at it, Eric, and see how feasible it is.
I've written enough stuff and done enough presentations.
Yes, I really appreciate all of your lectures and stuff about it.
Well, what I would do is go through the Alexanderson material, the patents, the stuff that I presented and what have you, and build yourself an Alexanderson antenna. It doesn't have to be giant 300-foot towers or any of that kind of stuff. It can be, a piece of field telephone wire on fence posts, because it's receiving out of the ground. It's not receiving out of the air. Build an Alexanderson antenna for that frequency. And it'll be, it'll probably be about 300 ohms, so have like a transformer or something to connect it to the radio receiver, whatever you use. The selective voltmeter is good, but the problem is most selective voltmeters don't have carrier reinsertion, so you don't get they need a BFO. So I had a very sophisticated system at Landers that used coherent balanced modulators that were all built from scratch. So I don't know.
Would that also be like a balanced mixer?
Yeah. So basically, if you could build a regenerative receiver for that frequency, which is a pretty simple device,
Oh, that should be easy.
They have random receivers have remarkable sensitivity, and they're extremely simple. The only problem is the Navy signals might choke it, but that's another possibility. You know, if you're lacking a receiver, I don't know. You know, I don't know what your resources are or what have you. Obviously, you know, it's not an easy frequency to receive.
I've got pretty good resources. I've been in electronics for most of my life, and I've got.
There used to be the Navy. There used to be the Navy receivers that I had a pair of Landers. They were they went down to 15 kc. They were made by National, and there was 3 bands, and one was VLF. I don't know if you could find one of those things. They were tuned radio frequency chain with a regenerative detector, and they were that's what the hams called the boat anchor, because the things, you know, they weighed about like 60, 70 pounds.
Yes.
And it had that big, you know, dial on the front with the big knob, you know, and the kind of sweeping pointer. I forget what the nomenclature was on it, but they were used on all the World War II submarines. You could find one of those or some other Navy receiver that has carrier reinsertion, you know, in other words, a BFO of some type. That would save a lot of hassles, because you got plenty of selectivity. You don't have to worry about the Navy signal coming in and jamming you out.
Yeah, I already found a coil that'll give me better selectivity than what I was first experimenting with. So, well, we're going to take a stab at it, see if we get any results, and maybe I can get back to you in a letter or something. I want, you know, whatever you do, let me know about it. I want to know about what happens. Yeah, one of the other things here, I never received any international long-wave broadcasts from, say, Europe or Africa or some other country all my life until this year. I've been able to pretty often, almost every week, a couple days a week, I'm able to pick up 171 kilocycles out of Morocco and 252 kilocycles out of the next country over, Algeria.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think any of that was...
They come in clear enough at times. I can hear the voice clear enough. It's just above the noise. And you can hear when they play music, and you can tell what kind of music it is.
Yeah.
So that kind of tickles me that I can... It's like 4,000 miles away. Amazing.
Yeah, I think basically Europe has suspended all radio broadcast on HF, medium frequency, and the low frequency band. It's not like it used to be. When I was a kid, if you had an HF radio, there was not a dead spot on the band. The whole thing was completely jammed. There was 25,000 stations on the air, according to the RCA frequency logs back in 1967.
Yeah, there's been a fight over there among the older people to keep some of the stations on the air yet, but I think it's a losing battle with all the digital crap that's going on.
Yeah, digital is totalitarian, and it's not going to allow. So, but
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, but there's still experimenters.
Understand.
But at any rate, let me know what your results are.
Okay, very good. I don't have any further questions at this point, Eric. I'm done.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, let's see if your area code is 760. I'm unmuting you right now. Go ahead and say your name and where you're from.
Hello, Aaron?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Aaron. Hi, Eric. Earlier in the call today, you talked a bit about Tesla coils that produce high voltage. And
what's your name?
Hello?
Yeah, what's your name?
Oh, it's Frank from California.
Okay, thanks, Frank.
Okay, hi, Eric. Earlier in the call today, you talked a bit about Tesla coils that produce high voltage, and it's my understanding that the high voltage is produced by voltage magnification by quarter standing wave.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand the parameters that determine the resonant frequency other than the electrical length. For example, why does the resonant frequency of a single layer Tesla coil change when you bring your hand or an object close to the coil?
Because you're increasing the capacitance.
Okay, and so I knew it was related to capacitance, but if it's a quarter standing wave that's producing the high voltage at the one end and current at the other, like you mentioned earlier, is it that when you're altering that capacitance, are you altering the velocity factor, or how,
yeah,
what role is?
You're slowing it down.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's the role that the capacitance is playing by varying the capacitance when you bring your hand close to the coil. You're changing the capacitance, which is altering or slowing down the velocity factor. Is that correct?
Yeah, technically. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but that's an ample explanation.
Okay, and if I wanted to understand that better, are there any books or videos you can suggest specifically about that, understanding how what parameters affect that resonant frequency of a Tesla coil?
Yeah, probably the old wireless books from around Marconi's time.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks, Eric. Yeah. Thanks, Aaron.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Frank.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Okay. Let's see. David in Michigan. Give me a second here. Okay. Go for it, David.
Yeah. Hey, Aaron. Thanks. I just remembered when you were talking to the man from Kentucky discussing the sun and the earth. Eric, I remember you saying in one of your videos that you can't see the stars from space. Do I have that right?
Allegedly, you can't. I don't know. I haven't been out there, but it seemed to be from investigation done by myself and Tom Brown way back in the Borderland Sciences days that the sun and the stars are not really visible in outer space without some means to make them visible. I have no proof of that, but it seems to fit with the way that I look at things from my upbringing and the works of Nikola Tesla and Wilhelm Reich. That's probably the case. And the whole Einstein thing is a complete fraud. There really is not any propagation velocity until it becomes light, and it can't become light until it interferes or interacts with physical matter. So it's a theory.
I see.
And it seems to be, when you look at pictures of, like moonwalks and what have you, you never can see the stars. Now you can say, well, maybe it's because the surface of the moon's so bright, so the camera can't pick up the faint objects, or.
Right.
So I tend to believe it, but beliefs are not scientific facts, and it would be interesting to actually know, but I wouldn't expect NASA or anybody to be very cooperative on that level, because it interferes with the Einsteinian concept of light and what have you.
Right. All right. Other than that, I was just going to ask, I heard you talking about the Alexanderson antenna with the previous gentleman, and I won't make you go back into it, but I just wanted to for my benefit, the properly configured Alexanderson antenna is what you would describe as a longitudinal longitudinal transmitter.
Yeah, it's a telluric communicating system.
And does that have to? I saw in one of your videos when you were describing the antenna that it sends out a sine wave or half of a sine wave, and on the return path it cancels itself out. Does that have to do with the creation of a longitudinal wave?
I'm not certain to exactly what you were, because there's so many different aspects, but the velocity cancels out if you design the antenna in such a way, and I always design my antennas that way, so there's no longer any velocity factor. there's no propagation delay from one end of the antenna to the other. That's probably what you picked up on. So basically, what it does is it's similar to the Tesla methodology in that it tends to act monopolar. So the one terminal you have in the ground, which is the ground system of the antenna, it doesn't need to reference against one somewhere else. It also has the ability to excite the ionosphere electrostatically, and that is another possible propagation mode. But my work at Landers indicates that it's receiving out of the ground. And Alexanderson was very cautious in his patents to not refer to it as an electromagnetic system. So the Alexanderson was basically Steinmetz's protege. So Alexanderson, when you read his material, it's kind of like Steinmetz is talking to, and he kind of uses Steinmetz's same evasionary tactics to not say something that that'll get it so he can't get a patent or what have you.
Okay.
So Alexanderson basically saw it as an electrostatic antenna.
Okay. All right, great.
So without more lengthy research, the mode of propagation, it can't be arrived at without some really heavy scientific work. So I mean, I got into that and I made good progress, and then the Bolzers showed up. So right now I have no funding to continue. That line of research on. Even though I do have miles and miles of poles and wire out in the desert, I don't have the money to get it all connected up or put wire up where it's missing, or that's kind of stalled.
Right.
But at any rate, the right-of-ways are established, and most of the materials are on hand. So the next step now, is to get another batch of funding, but that's stopped. So we have I'd say about $250,000 into this project so far. A lot of it, was just securing the right-of-way, cleaning up the mess and vandalism, and going out and finding, abandoned sections of line out in Death Valley and other god-awful places and digging it all up and then moving it back here. And half that money went into getting this building usable because it was a complete shambles. It needed a new roof. I still have no electrical system. I've got like 1 or 2 outlets. That's it, a 110, even though I got 3-phase coming into the building.
Well, thanks again for your time.
Okay.
All right, thanks, David. Okay, we're going to have to wrap up here in just a little bit. Let's see if your area code is 605. Go ahead and say your name, where you're from, and go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Levi. I'm in the Black Hills of South Dakota.
Thanks, Levi.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. My question, Eric, is quick and simple. I discovered, more like stumbled upon, your essay, The Theory of Anti-Relativity, and I was wondering if you guys if it's posted on your website, or if it could be posted on your website with the free papers so that other people could be made aware of it.
Yeah, I don't know if it is or not. That presentation goes under many titles: Explosion at the Shipyard, Theory of Anti-Relativity, and then recently the titles of the 2 presentations that related to that topic got interchanged. So I have no idea about any of that at all. But Aaron might.
I found it on Gestalt Reality is where I found it. And
yeah, that's where I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, and then I looked through the rest of, to put it lightly, I've tried to devour everything you've written that I can find, Eric. It's really the best stuff. After having gone to school at the University in Wyoming and being taught a lot of BS about ionic and electron theory, it was refreshing to find your essay. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of everyone that exists and to go read it. And otherwise, thank you guys for transmitting, and I will continue to listen to your conversations. It's always great.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay,
right, thanks,
thank
Levi.
you. Bye.
Yeah, I can put that into a PDF and put that on Eric's website on the free papers place.
Awesome.
I think it's in. Awesome. I think it might be inside of Energetic Forum somewhere. It always takes a while to dig stuff out of there.
But yeah, I didn't dig far enough. I just wanted to bring that to the forefront of people's minds. It's a really good paper.
Great.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so we'll take maybe one last one from Eric Sparkman. Okay, go for it, Eric.
Hi, I just wanted to ask again. Griffin spoke briefly about a double delta Y configuration for a receiver for the ionosphere data. Is there any more information?
No. The delta Y was for power harmonic analysis, not the ionospheric reception.
So he was just saying delta Y like a operator?
That did not relate to the ionospheric reception. It was a different topic.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
Yeah, so you were wondering the delta Y like an operator, you're talking about like mathematical?
Yeah, I was confused as to the information. I just wanted to try to do some simple experiments like Griffin's been doing, and I was just wondering about the apparatus where he got his data for the ionosphere.
Okay. Yeah,
the big problem you're going to have is finding a tiny three-phase alternator that generates a sine wave to do the experiments with. That was the biggest problem to overcome.
Okay.
So he had to use something that was never really even designed for doing this kind of generation and get it to generate, which is it's highly inefficient and doesn't put out a lot of power. So that's the problem, is where to get a nice little, 100, 200 watt three-phase alternator or a synchronous motor that can be made an alternator. And I don't really know. The best I could think of was a motor out of an old teletype, because they have to be synchronous. They've got to be locked to the power line frequency and then modify that into a polyphase generator.
Oh, wow, that's a nice reverse engineering.
Or just spend $10,000 to build one from scratch.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And you can't use electronics. It's got to be electrical.
It's all analog. All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Let's see, any final words, Eric, or?
No.
Okay, I got to get down to the post office to get your Heaviside stuff and get that presentation coming together right away. Running out of time before the conference. So I do want to mention again, the conference website is Energy Science Forum. No. Too many websites. EnergyScienceConference.com. And you can click on the 2020 schedule there, and you can see who all is presenting. The speaker bio page is not updated, because with all the COVID stuff, I had to rearrange stuff so many times I gave up on keeping the bio page updated. So if you go to the 2020 conference schedule link in the main menu bar, that's accurate. And so that's where Eric will be giving the two talks, Heaviside and Fortescue, and also all the presentations are listed at emediapress.com. If you scroll down on that homepage, you'll see links for the 2019 and 2018 presentations from the last two conferences. And if you mouse over the home link in the main menu bar of emediapress.com, you'll see a little pop-up come up with Home 2. And if you click that, that's the old catalog page that you can scroll through. And again, we're going to be developing a new catalog and new shopping cart and all that kind of stuff on the website to make it easy. Also, Eric's official forum is at energeticforum.com. And inside there, that's where Griffin has also posted the work on the little three-phase power system and the electrodynamic seismic forecasting experiments. That one is really easy. That just about anybody can replicate it if they got the space, and doesn't really take a lot of equipment, some rods, some wire, and the right kind of voltmeter and stuff. And you can see all his charts and everything on there. Also, again, EPD Laboratories, Inc. is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, and all donations are tax deductible. Anything that you can contribute absolutely helps and it's greatly appreciated. You can go to ericpdollard.com, and in the right column you'll see a donate link if you could donate by PayPal. And there's an address in Spokane, Washington where you can send checks or money orders, and then I just forward those to the bank down there in Nevada. And also, take note that Eric is not receiving mail at Lone Pine, California anymore. It's a Nevada address, and you can find that on the website as well. And so I guess with that, I'll be seeing you here, Eric, in about a week and a half or less. And see 8, 9, 10, about 11 days is coming up here pretty quick. And so I guess we can, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody. And this will be on YouTube at some point. I haven't even had a chance to get the last one up on YouTube, but they will, both of them will be put up. I don't know if it's going to happen before the conference, but in any case, everybody, thanks for being on the call, and we'll see you next time.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks.